Okay. There's our theme music. We don't know what it is again, but we're here to Pilates Chicks. I'm Hillary.
I'm Davida.
And we're at season 4, episode 2. And should I give a little background on how we came up with the podcast?
Yeah, I think so.
Blah, 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 blah. So, Davida and I tend to send each other
Lots of things.
Off TikTok and Instagram. Usually it's puppies or cookies.
And Pilates things.
And Pilates things, exactly. But I saw this guy, and what's funny is my husband, Scott, for those that know him, he knew who this guy was. He listens to his podcast. I'm like, what?
Oh, nice. Yeah,
I
he's
know.
a known author.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I was like, new to me. Simon, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Sinek, S-I-N-E-K. Does that sound
I think so. Simon Sinek.
Yeah. And what was the book he wrote? You looked it up.
He has a bunch of different books.
But he has really uplifting, positive.
Yeah. Start with Why.
Start with Why.
The Infinite Game. Those are two that people know.
Those are the ones that people know. But look him up. It's like, all right. I sent her this because it was on how our brain doesn't do negative. It doesn't do no. And his example was, don't think of an elephant.
Classic example.
And then everyone thinks of an elephant because the brain doesn't understand not to do that. And so we thought, oh my gosh, that is so of the way we teach in our Pilates, or we hope that, we do, is that not saying no, not doing the negative, not only in our verbiage to our client, but in hopefully their chatter in their brain.
Yeah.
Because what was it you said about children?
Oh, like with kids, if you're like, well, don't touch that.
What do they do?
What do they want to do? They want to touch it.
Touch it.
You have to touch it. Don't push this button. I have to push
the button. So it's kind of the same thing. It's like, don't touch the hot stove.
Yeah.
Or when the waiter brings you your plate, don't touch it. It's hot. And you're like, okay.
Don't you always do that?
Yes.
You're like, oh, well, how hot is it? You kind of like quick touch it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it is hot.
And the waiter's like, I just told you not
to touch it.
But if you want to think about basically the way we teach in talking to a client, we chattered on it. Telling a client, don't move that.
Yeah.
Like, don't move your hip. And then what happens? That's all they think about.
Either they're only thinking about that, so they can't think about anything else.
And then everything, if you think about everything's going to freeze up.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I can't move that, and so what's going to move?
So then everything else is like not moving with it, or you're only thinking about that, so everything else starts to move. So you're not
in a weird way.
Yeah, and like just weird stuff. So what you're trying to tell them is we want this to be stable. You're trying to teach some stability. But if you're saying don't do this, then that kind of through the full body you're thinking, okay, well I'm kind of rigid.
Yeah.
So it's not really achieving what
rigid
you're wanting.
Is a good word.
You kind of hold,
Yeah.
Rigid.
The brain's like, don't move.
Yeah.
But I also, my pet peeve is a teacher saying no.
Yeah.
When the client's moving, no.
It's like chastising.
Like, it is.
Okay.
It's like no.
Yeah.
It's negative. It's like, and then they stop. Right? It's like what? Oh, no. I can't stop.
I like saying, like, okay, let's try again. If something like really doesn't work, let's try that again.
Okay. So here we go.
Yeah.
But if you think about the way I had a client, it's actually the same client. Luckily, I didn't name names. It's the same client I talked about with our last podcast. The one that was, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
This one day she came in, and you're right. She was like, she has that in her brain, that no all the time. It's like, no.
Perfectionistic kind of.
Yeah, and she came in and everything she did, she goes, I'd say we're going to do, because my clients know the name of exercises, so I'd say, we're going to do this. Oh, I can't do that. No, I can't do that. And I'm like, so everything I said, no, it's going to be bad. No, I can't do that. And I was like, okay, there's no more no, and what I want to do is we're going to do footwork on the Cadillac. I want you to do it, and at the end of it, I want you to tell me something you did well. And she's like, what? and it was really hard for her.
Isn't that
It was really
crazy?
hard.
It can be so hard to say what we think we did well. Or things we like about ourselves, because we're so
critical.
Yeah, so trained just in life to like critique things.
Yeah, and I think kind of what we talked about in the last podcast, especially not to generalize, but females more, because we kind of have this society kind of doing it for us half the time. But yeah, it's like that whole, if you tell your brain, I can't do this,
then you can't.
It's gonna go, okay.
Yeah, oh, I can't. Sometimes when somebody's saying, well, I can't do that, I just kind of ignore them. Like,
I do too.
I just don't even respond. Okay, grab your straps now, and we're gonna do it.
I don't hear
And then I start cueing them to do it.
I like to say, well, let's just see what happens.
Let's see what happens
Let's
today.
see what happens.
Let's see where we go today.
I won't kill you, I promise.
Yeah.
You won't fall off the reformer, I promise.
Well, and that's a good way, like, when, I can't do that. Well, let's see what happens. Let's see.
We'll see, because I bet you can.
Yeah.
But I really feel like by them saying I can't do this, it's kind of like, not that we do New Year's resolutions, but I feel like that's setting people up in the same aspect of failure. Is because, it's this, putting it out there in a way that's, you're like, oh, I'll never do that. I'll never, there's always that kind of like, well, I did it last year, but I'll try this year.
Yeah.
And it's just the same kind of setup, I feel, of
setting up to fail. Kind of. Yeah.
And your brain is like, no.
Yeah. But it's true, and like you're saying, like the whole idea the brain can't do negative. So, okay, don't think of the red wagon, okay, think of a red wagon.
I just pictured a red wagon.
Exactly, me too. And so if you, I can't do that exercise, okay, well, I can't do that exercise. So you're just setting yourself up for that.
Yeah. I mean, and you can take that into your whole life, right? I mean,
everything.
Everything. It's like, well, I can't get that new whatever it is because I can't get that job and I can't do this. And it's just like, okay, well
then
you just you can't. But, and I think the beauty of Pilates with that client is that you can say, okay, well, let's see what happens and let's kind of see where we can go, because there's all these little building blocks you can do. And then they're like, oh, that happened, so maybe I can do this.
What are the things that client needs? What do you need to build to that goal or to that exercise?
Yeah.
Maybe you can't do a teaser on the box right now, but hey, look,
we can
do it with the push-through bar, and then we can do it over here, and then
And then one day you go over to the box, and you do it.
Learn how to do it.
And learn how to do it, and just say I can't do it.
Yeah. So it's those building blocks, and like, so in life, like, okay, well, I can't get that job. Okay, well, maybe we can, but maybe we don't have the skills for it now. So what do I need to build towards it?
What do I need to do to get there?
Yeah.
Which is basically Pilates.
Yeah. It's essentially, it's that the end, like, well, there's never an end in Pilates, but that goal you're trying to get to. And then what are those things you can use, those stepping stones to build up to it?
And I think that's a good thing, because when you were doing this, I kind of thought of this. It's like you're building up, and the goal keeps going.
Keeps
moving. So you're always constantly moving forward.
Yeah. Well, the goal keeps getting more developed and bigger and more. And we're always just developing.
Yeah. But I think the fascinating thing for me was when I listened to that and I thought of Pilates and I sent it to you, it was kind of that, because so many clients, and we talked about kind of the psychology of them in the last episode, and then we have our whole series coming, is so many, and I'm, and I know you are too, it's like I have certain things in Pilates where I go, oh, in my head, I can't do that. My body doesn't do that. And it's like, my teacher's like, yes you can. Let's just go. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, okay. But yeah, you have to kind of but we all have that little like, oh, I can't do that.
Yeah.
That doesn't work for me, or my body won't do that.
Right. And like, it's like, well, let's do it to the ability that your body can do it.
Yeah.
Or let's see how much of that you can do.
And then you're always surprised, because you're like, oh, I got more than I thought out of it.
I mean, it's also like running. Like I've taught myself how to run, and I used to absolutely despise it, and I now hate to love it. And so when you first start, and you're like, oh my god, I can't run, and then it's like you go like 10 feet, and then you go 12
I'm
feet,
dying,
and then you go 2 blocks, and then it's like, oh my god, I used to say, oh, I can't run a 5K. That's insane. I can do it now.
Mm-hmm.
And
well, like you're biking
you build
too.
towards it. Yeah.
Yeah.
With all of our biking.
All our biking.
Like, oh, I can't do that hill. I'm like, well, you get to the top, you're like, oh, I did it. My husband gets mad at me all the time about that because I'm like,
are you going to tell how you go up a hill? Because you taught me that trick, and I told Scott.
Well, the whole time we're going up a hill, and I'm just complaining, and I'm like, oh my god, this is so hard. Oh my god, I can't do. Oh my god. Oh my god.
How much longer is
this?
This
Such a hard hill, and we're like grade like 10%, and dying, and it's like hard on a road. And so then we finally get to the top, and I'm like, oh, you say to him, that wasn't that hard. Why were you complaining the whole time?
Well, the best one is like we were out on that ride one day, and it was hilly. We were going up in Pacific Palisades, but Davida would give me a heads up. Okay, this hill is only this long, and it'll get to this point, and then it flattens out right at the top. Or we get, and then there's a little break, and then it goes more. And so I told my husband, I was like, I just need to know how long I'm going up, and then I'll be up because I can mentally prepare for it.
Yeah. And that's a good point, like mentally preparing.
Mm-hmm.
So if we have the
Because then you're like, I can do it.
Yeah.
Because I have this visual
I have
of
that
it.
trajectory. I know what I'm working towards.
Mm-hmm.
So if you like show the client that's, I can't, blah, 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 and you're like, okay, well, this is what we're working towards. And then you show them the first thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, oh, well, I can do that. And then, okay, this is the next part to do. Okay,
Well, I can do that.
And then, okay, well, then you get to the top of the hill.
There you are.
Get to the top of the
And then it's like, Davida, that wasn't so hard.
That wasn't so bad. Why are you complaining about that?
But I think that, and I don't know, have you ever had that client that you were able to kind of turn around that had that negativity and I can't do this, and just that was like their bread and butter in class?
Sure, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and then turning them around, because that's really a rewarding moment in teaching.
It is. I have some clients who, maybe they're not super negative about everything, but I can think of a couple in particular who will say, okay, we're doing this now, and name an exercise. I can't do that. And then, like we said, I kind of ignore it and set them up and say, okay, so now grab this, then cue them to start. And then they do
You're
it.
not
and
listening
then,
to me, that's what they're thinking.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe they just say, oh, I can't do it. And then
It's just a reflex.
And so then they'll finish the exercise and I say, well, you did it. Or sometimes, let's say I have another couple clients I can think of that I've been teaching for a while, and then they used to not be able to do something fully, and we worked through it, and then they'll do something, and I say, do you remember 2 years ago?
I love that moment.
You didn't think you could do that? They're like, I know, look, I just did it. I did it.
Well, that's like the client, I talked about her before. She's actually having knee surgery tomorrow, knee replacement surgery. But where we were doing the 100, and she was like in it, and she was curled up, and she's like, oh, look how I'm curled up.
Oh, and she was one that couldn't curl up.
Yeah,
as well.
she was just like, she's like, oh, I can't do that, I can't do that, oh no, I can't do that, I can't do that. And I'm like, well, let's just, do what we can do, see where we are. And then she's like, look at me.
Look at me doing the thing
Look
I
at me,
couldn't
Hillary.
do before.
So cute, so cute.
That was very cute.
Yeah, I love it. But I think, I don't know, I feel like there's a lot of, when we teach, there's a lot of moments where you want to like go, unless they're unsafe. If they're unsafe, you can go, no,
Oh, sure, yeah.
But there's always a way to word something to make people not go into that negative, no.
Yeah.
But like you said, kind of, if you want their hip to not be wibbly wobbly, you say, oh, can you press that right side of your hip into the mat? Can you?
Yeah.
Instead of going, don't move your hip.
So using the positive cueing
Instead
to
of
focus that.
Because then they're like, oh, I can push it down, but it doesn't stop anything else.
Yeah.
Because the brain didn't hear no, don't.
Right. And as the teacher, we need to know what, let's say, okay, their hips all wobbly around. So we need to know what might work to stabilize that.
Like, is it the leg that's not, engaged on the opposition? Is the arms? Is it, what is it?
Yeah, and you can try a cue. Okay, let's try to push through that opposite leg a little bit more. And then, okay, we're watching them. That didn't really do anything. Oh, and now try to reach through the arms a bit to, we're thinking, okay, maybe counterbalance. And so you can try a couple different cues.
Because we don't know.
And we don't know. But we know what might be able to help them.
Yes.
We know the
We're
work.
professionals.
We're professionals. And so we know the things that may build to help, but maybe for that person it doesn't quite work in their body. But it helps them move through and kind of feel those different parts that may build into the correct and more stable position. But they're not working on the, don't do that.
Yeah.
Don't wiggle.
They'll feel it and they'll figure it out. Like, they'll go, oh, I need to do this. It's like, I was a new teacher, and not relative, but relatively new. And I did this whole workshop on scoliosis, and you're like, oh, this needs to be, you have to do this. And so I was like, okay, so if I want her length on that side, do I have her hip go this way or that way? And I'm like, could you press into your right leg more? No, that didn't work. Can you press into your left leg more? And I'm like, oh yeah. And so, did you feel the difference between the two? And she's like, oh yeah. And I'm like, so sometimes we're just kind of like going with like, okay, let's see what happens here.
Giving them the cues that could work and see how they respond to it.
Exactly. But they're feeling that inside. And I love it because it's like this exploratory moment for them where they're like, oh, what is happening?
What kind of centers them? It makes them get more in tune also. If you're asking them, push this a bit more, see where that leg can go. So they're actually feeling it for themselves instead of the negative of don't lift that leg, don't move that side. So it's more,
don't let this happen.
Yeah.
Because it's going to happen. Yeah.
How do I not let that happen? Or similarly, like when you're biking and you're like, okay, there's a cone in the road. You're not supposed to look at the cone to get around it. You're supposed to look at the pathway you want to take to get around it.
It's like that Simon when he talked about skiing through trees.
Yeah.
And don't hit a tree, don't hit a tree.
Right.
So what do? You hit a tree.
You hit a tree. So you have to look at the path around it. So, okay, don't move your hip. Okay, well, how do I not move that?
My hip.
So for us, we're like, okay, I don't want this client to be moving the hip, so how can I tell them, okay, push the leg a bit, reach the da-da-da-da, so we have to give them the positive cueing.
Yeah, where the brain goes, oh, I can do that.
Yeah, I know how to do that.
I know how to do that. That's easy. I got it. Instead of, oh, don't do that.
Right. So maybe later on in their practice, they will then feel their hip moving and be, oh, I know how to stabilize that.
Yeah.
I can push this leg more, and they'll just intrinsically know it.
It's like that moment where you're teaching someone and you're about to cue, right? You're about to, and then they do it themselves, and you're like, oh, I said, that was brilliant.
Yeah.
And they're like,
well, I'll say, I was like, that was a great correction of your neck, or that was a good shoulder placement.
Yeah.
So I'm like,
because you're about to say it, and then they fix it because they've learned to feel it, and they understand where they are in space.
Yeah.
Proprioception.
Proprioception, and their practice is part of themselves. It's coming from them, not just us
telling
saying,
them.
Don't do that all the time.
Yeah. Because I feel like, and I tell this to people in my training, and I don't know how you feel about it, but I feel like we're teachers, meaning we teach them how to figure it out instead of just telling them, which I feel is more instructing.
Well, yeah, that's, as you were talking, that's what I was thinking. That's the difference between teaching and instructing.
Yeah.
So you can be shouting out, like you can teach a group step class or whatever, which
that's instructing.
You used to do, and instruct. Yeah, okay, step up and step up. And,
Grapevine.
And then, or are you teaching a client how to do something
for themselves?
Yeah, and how to learn it.
Yeah, and that's always, if you think about kids. And puppies, they respond to positive reinforcement. So why wouldn't adults, in this situation, respond more to positive, than negative?
Yeah.
I mean, I do.
I think everybody does. The negative, you shut down. You just hear no. It's
defeating.
Like,
It's like you're doing that wrong, or where you're like, do you see how this is crooked? We need to fix that. And then all the client is thinking, this is crooked.
Yeah.
They're not then
It's
following
wrong.
your path. It's like, this is wrong, this is bad.
Yeah. Well, and you say it a really good way in sessions, like, oh, see if you can bring that hip a little more forward. Instead of being like, you're crooked.
Fix it, Davida.
See if you can move that hip forward more. So it's like, it's a lot better. Because you're like, oh my God, it's wrong. No, it's just, let's move it a little, see where it can go a little bit there.
Yeah. I did a session once and no one will know. And the teacher was so focused on my feet the whole time. Like, we got on the reformer and did footwork, and then I was off the reformer, and then we were working my feet, and all I could think about was, I'm miserable, I'm not having a good time, and my feet hurt. Because it was all like, this is wrong, we need to fix this, this is wrong. So particular. And I just remember, I was a newer teacher, I just remember thinking, I don't ever want to make someone feel that way.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't how they were teaching in terms of like choreography or pattern of where we were going. It was the fact that I was made to feel like something was wrong with what I was doing with my feet. And I couldn't fix it. I didn't know what they were talking about.
Yeah.
It's like,
can't quite connect to it at the time.
Yeah, but it was like, my feet hurt for like 3 days. I think I was so like, ugh.
Well, maybe you were feeling like tense about it, that you felt wrong, so you were gripping your feet more.
Yeah, because someone's telling you you're doing something wrong, so your body reacts.
The whole body reacts.
The whole body reacts.
And then maybe, like, I know I feel this way, if you're in a class and you think you're doing it wrong, then you're thinking about that positioning the whole time, and not in a positive way where you're like fixing it in a helpful,
like where we just talked about, just can you move that hip a little forward?
Yeah, so you're not like developing it, you're just like constantly like afraid of doing it wrong, and that's not a good development. You're not going to grow from that, and it doesn't feel good.
It doesn't feel good. It feels icky.
Yeah.
So I think I love this guy. I hope we're saying his name right. Simon Sinek. Oh, he should be our. No, he's not our sponsor. Toe Socks is our sponsor now that we're on that. Who they don't know they're our
sponsor. We sponsor.
We sponsor.
Shout out to Toe Socks.
Shout out. But I feel like it's we need to remember that as teachers, as when people are coming in and learning from us, is that the brain does think that way. And if we say, no, don't do something, that's exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And then they tense up, and then they feel bad, and they feel defeated.
Mm-hmm. Whether or not they're, like, super defeated, it might just be, like, a small kind of, like,
I feel like it's like, you know, in the movies or something, where it's like this little piece of someone just keeps getting nipped away.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know
like
what
a
I
little
mean?
cartoon.
Like the little cartoon.
Kind of deflate a little bit more.
Like the balloon just starts to... That's like, I feel like when we do that to our clients, we're kind of doing that.
Deflating them. Which our goal is to lift them up and help them feel better.
And feel confident.
Overall goal of Pilates.
Yeah.
To feel better walking out than when they came in.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's just like, in my practice at least, I feel like for everybody, that's our
general
goal for clients. We want them to leave feeling better than when they walked in the door.
Not that they failed.
Yeah.
It's like, I didn't do that well, or it didn't happen, or I don't understand what I did wrong.
Yeah. And even if they do figure out, like, even if they do understand what they were doing wrong, just that feeling of, I didn't do it right. Like, that doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
So
being told by somebody else you didn't do it right. It's one thing when you're like, oh, I could have done better.
Yeah, if you know what you can figure out.
Yeah.
That's different.
Yeah. But having someone go, no.
Yeah. No.
I've actually been in studios where I heard the teacher yell, no.
I have, yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. I've heard, no.
No. That's a good one. No. The client's like, what?
And like for me, like down the hall or in like across the studio, I'm like, what? Like I tense up. I'm like, what? I mean,
have you noticed that that's the other thing? Because if you think about, we need to wrap this up, but we can just keep going. But if you think about, like, you're in a studio with you've been in that situation.
Multiple teachers.
And that teacher is like, no. You can see your clients react intense because they're hearing that word. It's like, no. And it's like, oh, yeah.
Then everyone's like, oh, I don't want to do something wrong.
Yeah, it's like, oh. But yeah, so I think the bottom line is that the negative and the brain do not go together, and the negative and Pilates do not go together. Period. Mic drop.
So no nose.
No nose in Pilates. But you have to think. I mean, maybe like when you're teaching, not see. Do you do that? Do you say no? Do you say don't? And how do you change that?
Yeah, and that could be a good experiment. Like, don't feel like it's wrong that you're saying that, but
how often?
And how can we change that and see where we can go without saying no or without taking the negative approach?
Yeah, and see what changes for your client, because I can guarantee you it's going to be more.
They'll probably grow more, maybe absorb what you're saying a little bit more because they're not tensed or feeling.
They'll move more freely.
Yeah, they'll feel a little bit less inhibited by being able to be told the positive growth, like the positive cueing.
Not that we're saying, bring the unicorns into the studio, but...
Right, it's not a false positivity.
Yeah.
It's taking, like, positive cueing.
Yeah.
No obnoxious, fake positivity, but the positive cue.
Yeah. The positive cue is key.
Yeah, to push through something or reach for something instead of don't move that side or don't do that. Yeah.
So that's a good New Year's kind of like going into it in a positive way in your teaching.
Yeah, and it connects back to our first episode of Psychology of Clients, how people learn and how we can connect with them.
Yeah.
So taking those ideas in the new year.
Yeah. Well, that was fun. Thanks for listening. Our theme music will come on.
Bum, bum, bum.
Bum, bum.
Happy
and we will
New Year.
Happy New Year. And we'll see you later. Yep.